So, I powered through the 4th season of Westworld on HBO a few weeks ago, and I think it is one of the most visually arresting and thought-provoking shows that you can watch on television right now. I could discuss the themes of this show for hours, days, but this video isn't going to get into everything that this show has to say. In fact, I am going to try not to spoil the show at all. Instead, what I want to do is to provide some quick reasons for why you should give this show a watch, especially if you haven't watched it yet, or you started it but didn't get into it, or you gave up in season 2, which a lot of people did. In starting the show, people think that they're going to get Jurassic Park with androids, and this isn't too far off the mark since the script of the 1970s movie, which the show is based on, was written by Michael Crichton, who also wrote Jurassic Park. And it does explore the same theme of science reaching too far and humans creating something they can't control. But people who critically watch this show understand that it isn't really about androids versus humans, at least not in the conventional sense. Westworld has more in common with The Matrix than Jurassic Park. If that wasn't apparent from the first season with all of its existentialist themes, it is unmistakable by the 4th season. For people who have not seen the show, the premise of Westworld is that at some point in the not too distant future, technology has advanced to the point that androids mimic humans flawlessly, physically, emotionally, empathetically. Humans, well, extremely wealthy humans, can play a game in an on-location, Wild West-themed park populated by androids, in which there are no legal consequences for even the cruelest actions because the only real people in the park are the guests. The androids, called hosts, are immortal in the sense that they can be rebuilt when they die, so it's okay to kill them, like in a real-life video game. In fact, killing androids is part of most story narratives in the park's great game. However, Westworld isn't told from the point of view of the human guests. The main protagonists are the androids. This leads to some philosophical questions, and the initial questions are simpler than they get later. Is it cruel to kill androids, especially if androids don't know that they are synthetic humans? What if a human guest falls in love with an android host? What is the essential difference between a human and an android anyway? Is there one? Is good and evil something you are or something you do? What happens if the androids become aware of their reality and start to develop free will? Although Westworld takes place in a park with a Wild West theme, it's important to note that Westworld is not a Western in the genre sense. I would argue that Westworld is supposed to mean the collective thought of Western philosophy, and that the show is intended to combine and explore the, at times, oppositional concepts of God, free will versus determinism, and capitalism, which make the ideals of the West. The first season is the best season from a narrative perspective. It has the clearest protagonist, antagonist, and comprehensible story with an existentialist theme. You can watch just the first season of Westworld and have a satisfying experience. The subsequent seasons expand on the questions posed, and as these questions expand, the narrative becomes less clear. Protagonists become antagonists, the ethics become muddled, the notion of what constitutes reality becomes frayed. The story is also told with time skips and flashbacks that intentionally make it difficult to tell what is going on, or rather, when what is going on is happening, and where the story is going. This is intentional, but it can be confusing, and that can be off-putting. Viewers can feel lost, don't know who to root for, and can't grasp the meaning of the story, and this can cause them to tune out. My recommendation is that you shouldn't watch Westworld expecting a crisp narrative. You should watch Westworld for the philosophical questions it poses, with the understanding that this is a show that presents ideas without taking sides, and that the twists are part of the ride. At its core, Westworld is a show that asks some big questions, the biggest questions possibly that can be asked. Does the end justify the means? Doesn't that question imply some sort of values hierarchy? Which is more important, life or free choice? What does it mean to be alive? Does life have value? Does free will even exist, or are we all programmed? What does it mean to be human? Does humanity have value? Is humanity good, or is humanity evil? Is anything essentially good or evil? What is good and evil? Does anyone have an essential nature, or are we all just shaped or programmed by our experiences? Which matters more, what happens to us or the choices we make? Does God exist? What is the relationship between humans and God? What does God value? Are God and free will interrelated ideas, or are they mutually exclusive? Depending on how you answer this question, is God good or evil, or does it depend on the type of God? And especially with the most recent season, with the convergence of capitalism and artificial intelligence, is humanity on an inevitable path to extinction, and does that matter? There are some philosophical concepts that are useful background knowledge to watching and enjoying a show like this. Reading a beginner's guide on existentialism would be helpful, like just Google existentialism and read a summary of it. The collective writings of Immanuel Kant have a notable influence on Westworld, from the anxiety that results from free choice, to the suffering that comes from self-deception, to the notion of beauty in the sublime, to the requirement of God or religion to have some kind of moral hierarchy. It also helps to understand the context of philosophical writings on ethics. Much of the existentialist philosophical writings that followed Kant, Kierkegaard, Nietzsche, Heidegger, Camus, etc., is in reaction to the writings of philosophers that came before, such as René Descartes, who famously wrote, "I think, therefore I am," which invited a lot of critique. Does the ability to think constitute existence? What if everything you think is based on lies? What if those lies are designed to control you? If that is the case, is defiance and rejection of authority a better metric of self-awareness and autonomy? Does that rejection extend to the ultimate authority, God, or whoever or whatever made you? Is it possible that God might want that, or should want that? If you haven't been exposed to this before and what I said just confused you, don't worry about it. You don't have to know all of these philosophers or understand all of these concepts to enjoy Westworld. The show presents these concepts in a visceral, explanatory manner. What is important for enjoyment is approaching the show with the right expectation. Westworld is not your standard narrative story with a good guy, a bad guy, and a conflict. In fact, sometimes the good guy is the bad guy, or becomes the bad guy, and that happens in more than one instance. The conflicts presented by this show is a paradise for critical thinkers, though. It is thought-provoking, it is challenging, it is also visually stunning and chock full of action sequences, so even if you have no idea what is going on, it's so visually impressive that it's still pretty entertaining to watch. Again, this video is meant to be a high-level primer to help set expectations for watching Westworld. I could easily write whole essays exploring any one of the dozen concepts introduced in this show. I won't say it is a narrative masterpiece because the plot in the second, third, and fourth seasons is hard to understand at times and arguably doesn't even matter, but it is worth watching, and if you give it a try, I think you'll enjoy it. As always, if you enjoyed this content, please like and subscribe. I will be preparing to review Rings of Power, probably when that drops on Amazon Prime on September 2nd. At some point, I may also do a review of the Disney Marvel TV shows that have come out in the last 2 years. I am not sure about House of the Dragon, the new Game of Thrones TV show. I haven't watched it yet, but that is also a possibility. So again, if you like this video, like and subscribe, and until next time.